I'm Dwight Knowlton. I'm a fine artist and designer based here in Phoenix, Arizona. I mix fine art and design. As a fine artist, I love to just let loose and explore and see what happens. I love the process of discovery and creativity. I say sometimes that I don't necessarily have a style. My style is curiosity. And so I love just, throwing ink at paint and mixing wet and dry and everything you can do to just see what the results are. And my gesture work is really an example of that side of my fine art. I'm super excited to share several new pieces at this event, several of them being the largest in that particular genre that I've done. I'm going to be debuting the largest ever aluminum bent wire single continuous line sculpture that I've done of a Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing. The collaborative piece where we've each done the 250 GTO is my largest ever gesture painting yet, and took me over 20 roughs to get to 3 full-size finals, of which I got 1 keeper. So a tremendous amount of effort into that one largest ever gesture painting that I've done. And then a couple of the largest and first of my lineage series to be on canvas and not paper. For this 250 GTO piece that we've all chosen to explore in our own ways, I've done 20 gestural sketches on the way to my final choice of what are the happy accidents along the way that I love, and then done 3 at full size at 7 feet by 3.5 feet to try and find those happy accidents again on a large scale canvas. And so, it's a little bit of a, hey, when the red and the black collide in this way near the wheel, and you've got the car color, but it's coming into the wheel, and that's not realistic, but it just gives an attitude and it gives a feeling of motion. That's something where that's exploration, that's discovery, and that's in the moment. And then on the design side of my fine art, there's a lot of stuff that I plan out ahead of time, and I meticulously, whether it's the lineage series or my single continuous line drawings, or the overlap, mid-century overlap pieces that I've done, that's where all of the planning happens ahead of time, and then the piece gets painted once you've figured it out. They both reward me in different ways. The gesture pieces reward me as it's happening. And it might fall apart and it might end up in the trash and I might have to redo it to get a keeper. And so the joy of that one happens while I'm doing the piece, whereas the joy of the more design-inspired paintings that are more meticulously planned ahead of time and the outcome is known ahead of time, that reward kind of comes when I've solved the problem and then I have yet to put that on canvas. Well, I fell in love with cars as a kid. My dad shared a book with me that changed my life, which is The Red Car by Don Stanford, about an MGTC, and I was smitten with European sports cars from that moment on. I drew all the time as a kid, mostly cars, and then went to college and was a fine art major. As a fine art major, I discovered design and branding and marketing, advertising, and I fell in love with that. And so I spent the first 20 years of my career having painted, having sculpted, having done all that stuff. I ended up doing branding and more corporate design, environmental design for retail stores, and some digital campaigns for Intel and Marriott and Unilever, big companies like that. And when my son was born, I wanted to share my passion with him through a book, my first book called The Little Red Racing Car. And that got me illustrating, which is close to being an artist. You have a brief and you're going in a direction rather than it being just discovery. Where's this going to take me? You have a planned outcome as an illustrator, whereas as a fine artist, you're like, where's this going to go? But it got me, drawing and painting again, and so I began to get invited to be the poster artist for some events, and over the course of that I've been the poster artist for the Pittsburgh Vintage Grand Prix and the Amelia Island Concours, the Bernina Gran Turismo in Switzerland, and all these amazing events over the years. I can't even count them. But through those invitations to create very intentional automotive art, I started getting excited about where can I take automotive art where it's not just a picture of a car, it's not an illustration, it's something you could hang in your home and love it as a piece of art. And maybe sometimes for the non-car lover, for the non-automotive person, you could love it just as this gestural stroke with these textures and layers, but others might walk in and see that that indicates the form of a Ferrari 250 GTO. So I've very much focused on taking automotive fine art in a direction that's inspired by fine art itself first, and it functions as art. And then how does that apply to the car, or can I hide something automotive in there that speaks to the automotive enthusiast, but it still is not out of place in a well-appointed home. It could be in the dining room and you could love it as a piece of art, but yet there's something that says, hey, that's for me, the car guy. I think one of the big highlights for me, as far as speaking to the quality of my work and who it speaks to, is having had two of my automotive design heroes, two designers, globally renowned, buy original pieces from me. And I'm knowing that if it's connecting with and making the cut with these people that are heroes of mine, that I'm getting something right. I'm excited to share several new pieces, some of them bigger and different than anything I've done before, and be alongside these other three incredibly talented fine artists. So I'll see you at Art House Collective.